I now call to order the Committee on House Administration for today's committee meeting. A quorum is present, so we may proceed. The meeting record will remain open for 5 legislative days so that members may submit any materials that they wish to be included therein. There is one item on our docket today, Committee Resolution 115-19, a resolution to disperse $200,000 from the committee's reserve fund to the Committee on Veterans Affairs. This disbursement is in response to a request the committee received from the chairman and ranking member of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. The disbursement will provide resources for the Committee on Veterans Affairs to establish a new technology modernization subcommittee. This new subcommittee will focus its oversight efforts on the VA's $15.8 billion electronic health record modernization program, by far the largest electronic health record transition ever attempted, as well as one of the federal government's biggest IT projects. I would now like to recognize my colleague and the committee's ranking member, Mr. Brady, for the purpose of providing an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I support the funding request for the Veterans Committee, and I've received assurances from the ranking member that he will have access to 1/3 of the funds, consistent with our tradition of how money is spent on our committee and how our committee is handled. With that assurance, I support the request and urge my colleagues to do the same. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized for the purpose of an opening statement? I now call up and lay before the committee Committee Resolution 115-19. Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with and the resolution is considered read and open for amendment. Would any member like to make a statement or offer an amendment? Seeing none, I move the committee adopt Committee Resolution 115-19. The question is on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Does any member wish to submit supplemental or minority views? Seeing none, for all the matters considered here today, I would ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make technical and conforming changes if necessary. Without objection, so ordered. That concludes today's markup. Without objection, the markup is adjourned. Quick enough.
Impressive, Chairman.
Are we ready? Here. I now call to order the Committee on House Administration for today's hearing examining the operations and workforce of the United States Capitol Police. We will pause for a moment while that is set up. I want to thank everyone for being here today. The hearing record will remain open for 5 legislative days, so members may submit any materials they wish to be included. A quorum is present, so we may proceed. When Congress moved from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. in 1800, one man was hired to protect the U.S. Capitol building. Nearly 30 years later, in 1828, the U.S. Capitol Police was born. Now, in its 190th year, the USCP employs more than 2,200 officers and civilians, protects approximately 16 million square feet of Capitol buildings and grounds, and manages a budget north of $400 million. The USCP plays a crucial role in protecting the legislative branch. The USCP's mission is to protect the Congress, its members, employees, visitors, and the facilities, so that Congress may fulfill its constitutional and legislative responsibilities in a safe, secure, and open environment to the people the institution serves. And we know that this is no small or easy task. The shooting incident that took place 1 year ago on the baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia, reminded us all of the ever-growing challenges faced by law enforcement in this country and around the world. We are grateful to law enforcement for their willingness to risk their lives in the protection of others, and we especially appreciate the men and women of the USCP, whose daily efforts and constant dedication ensure that this Congress may serve the nation with as little danger or disruption as possible. Much of this has to do with the USCP's leadership. Chief Verderosa has led the USCP for 2 years, and his more than 30 years' experience with the department means he knows its operations inside and out. The committee looks forward to discussing how the Chief's leadership has transformed the department and what his vision of the future looks like. We expect to hear from our panel on the challenges that USCP faces related to its strategic plan for operations and workforce development. These challenges include promoting accountability through employee engagement and a positive work environment, nurturing a culture of professionalism, inclusion, and performance-oriented management, becoming a data-driven, innovative, and continually learning organization, establishing and enforcing best practices, standard operating procedures, and internal controls, providing consistent, effective, and up-to-date training, recruiting and retaining a new generation of employees, and planning for future human capital and operational needs. It is our hope to examine the effectiveness of the USCP's management structure and human capital initiatives in bolstering the department's reputation as a leader in law enforcement operations. I thank our panel for their appearance before the committee today, and I'd now like to recognize the ranking member of the committee, Mr. Brady, for the purpose of providing an opening statement. Mr. Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you for calling this hearing today. I'm glad to see the chief, who I've been known for a long time, and our union leader, who, despite being a New York Giants fan, is not a bad guy. I appreciate our acting inspector general for stepping in while the board conducts this search. My dad was a police officer, and since my time in Congress, I've been a supporter of Capitol Police. I tried to support what the department needs. You have hard jobs, and I want you to know you have allies on the dais and on the House floor who want to help you, because all you are trying to do is help us. Last year's shooting at the baseball practice, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, and the tragedy of the train accident are nationally known examples of how important your work is. But the chairman and I know that work happens every day, and I look forward to hearing what more we can do to support you. And I thank you for being here, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Does any other member wish to be recognized for the purposes of an opening statement? Seeing none, I'd now like to introduce our panel of witnesses. Chief Matthew R. Verderosa became the USCP's 9th Chief of Police when he assumed his position on March 21, 2016. As Chief of Police, Chief Verderosa oversees the entire police department, including its operations and administration, and he is a valued partner in the daily operations on Capitol Hill. The Chief has been with the department in numerous roles since 1986, having worked his way up through the ranks and gaining a very unique law enforcement perspective along the way. Mr. Michael A. Bolton is the Acting Inspector General for the USCP. He assumed his position this year when the second USCP IG retired. Mr. Bolton has been with the IG's office since 2006 and has more than 30 years of law enforcement and auditing experience in both the private and public sectors. And our last witness, Mr. Gus Papathanasiou, I hope I came close on that, Gus, is the chairman of the USCP's Labor Committee for the Fraternal Order of Police. He has served on the Union Executive Board since 2009 and became a chairman in 2016, and he's in his 16th year of employment with USCP. The committee has received your written testimony. You will have 5 minutes to present a summary of that submission. You know the drill. The clock will be there. It will be green when it starts for 4 minutes. It will turn yellow with a minute remaining, and then will turn red after the 5 minutes time has expired. The chair now recognizes our witnesses for the purposes of their opening statements, and I'll begin with Chief Verderosa. Chief.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Brady, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss the proactive efforts of the United States Capitol Police to protect Congress and secure the U.S. Capitol complex in an environment of increasing threats. I am joined here today by members of my executive team and the executive management team, including Chief of Operations, Assistant Chief Steve Sund, Chief Administrative Officer Mr. Richard Braddock, General Counsel Gretchen DeMar. I'd also like to thank the committee for the support of the department, our personnel, and our operations. Congress has been very generous in providing the resources necessary to support our crucial mission. Since I testified here last, we have seen many changes on Capitol Hill and within the department in response to current events and serious incidents. The reality is the Capitol remains an attractive target. Therefore, we must continually assess the risks and adjust our strategies for addressing any threats. As police officers, we do not know what we may face each day. We train and prepare so that we can respond to any threat in an instant because lives depend on it. We can constantly work to ensure the department's tactics do not become predictable or routine and that our personnel are always prepared. It is with this in mind that we have worked to align these security realities with our strategic goals and available resources. Our top priorities continue to be the security initiatives that will mitigate vulnerabilities and enhance the overall safety of the complex. We constantly work to maintain a level of security necessary to balance and assess access and security. Over the past year, the department has managed an ever-increasing number of demonstrations, has swiftly responded to critical incidents and civil disobedience, and has investigated numerous credible threats. At the same time, the number of visitors coming to the Capitol complex has steadily increased. In 2017, our officers screened 12.5 million individuals at building entrances and interior checkpoints. We're also aggressively pursuing all leads and investigating threats we receive. As a result of last June's active shooter incident, there's a heightened awareness by individuals regarding their own personal security and the safety of the campus. Last year, the number of threat assessment cases that we opened and investigated nearly doubled. As I noted earlier, the department has grown and transformed to address new and emerging threats. We've also made great strides in implementing best practices and to further our strategic efforts as a model law enforcement agency. We've developed and implemented more than 400 professional standards that were established by the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, which was we recently received our 6th consecutive CALEA accreditation. The department has also benefited from our Office of Inspector General through our business development recommendations. Since 2006, we've successfully closed nearly 85% of the IG's 403 recommendations. Protecting congressional facilities goes hand in hand with our overall operational plans. When I testified before this committee last February, I outlined a multi-year strategy and provides additional physical security throughout the complex and addresses 3 critical mission sets. Chief among these projects is enhancing the garage security. We have added personnel and have installed physical security hardware at the entrances of some of the garages, and we'll be in a position to complete that planned security perimeter as the architect finishes its construction projects in the Rayburn and Cannon. Staffing for this important initiative should be in place by May of 2019. Another important tool that we have utilized to enhance screening portals located at the House and Senate galleries. These were installed last summer. We're seeking additional resources in our FY19 budget request to add the sworn personnel to staff these screening portals at the Visitors Center as well. With recent addition of pre-screeners at numerous posts outside of the House and Senate office buildings, we are increasing our abilities to better secure and screen at the building access points, reducing our exposure to threats. Having an officer, a visible deterrent at every access point, especially at the high-volume entrances, ensures that any threat is met and stopped outside of our buildings. Our greatest assets are our employees. I'm committed to working closely with the Capitol Police Board and Congress and the FOP to ensure that we continue to invest our resources into training, updating and replacing key equipment and systems, and to ensure our employees have the tools they need. This includes identifying, training, mentoring, and promoting those individuals within the department to be the next generation of leaders. Over the past year, we have promoted more than 90 officers. All of the sworn personnel who have joined our command ranks bring a wealth of experience and expertise to the department. I would be remiss if I didn't note that this week, Special Agent Crystal Greiner is receiving the Julie Y. Cross Award from the Women in Federal Law Enforcement. This honor is bestowed upon an officer who acts with exceptional courage or heroism, or for an unusual degree of stamina or willingness to go beyond the call of duty. I'm very proud of Special Agent Greiner's response to the active shooter last year, and I wanted to note publicly my appreciation to Wiffle for bestowing this honor upon Special Agent Griner. And, sir, as always, our mission continues to grow to be serving and protecting the Congress and the legislative process. I want to ensure that each one of our employees goes home safe every day. That's my main focus, and to keep this institution safe. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to provide an update for the Department's priorities and activities. I know that we all are committed to keeping everyone who works in and around the Capitol complex safe and secure, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have, sir.
Thank you, Chief Verderosa. The Chair will now recognize Mr. Bolton for 5 minutes for the purposes of his opening statement. You might slide that a little closer to you there, Mr. Bolton.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before the Committee on House Administration to discuss the United States Capitol Police operations and workforce. My name is Mike Bolton. I am the Acting Inspector General for the United States Capitol Police, and I've been acting IG since April of 2018. I'd like to thank the Committee for its sustained and unwavering support of the United States Capitol Police Office of Inspector General. The OIG is dedicated to ensuring that the Department, Board, and committees are accurately informed of audit and investigative reviews through the submission of our independent reports. These comprehensive reports serve the Department in achieving the goals of their mission in providing a financially responsible operation as well as a safe and secure environment for all members, staff, public employees, and visitors to the Capitol complex. However, none of this would be possible without the support of the Congress and that of the Capitol Police Board. We very much appreciate our discussions with you and your staff about our work and future projects. These discussions have provided us with a regular opportunity to provide the Committee with important updates about our activities, challenges, and focus. The Inspector General Act established for most agencies an OIG and sets its mission, responsibilities, and authority. The unique nature of the IG function can present a number of challenges for establishing and maintaining effective working relationships. To work most effectively together, the agency and its OIG need to clearly define what each considers a productive relationship and then conscientiously manage those goals in an atmosphere of mutual respect. By providing objective information for promoting government management, decision-making, and accountability, OIG contributes to the agency's success. OIG is an agent of positive change, focusing on eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, and identifying problems and recommendations for corrective actions by leadership or agency leadership. OIG provides the agency, board, and Congress with objective assessments of opportunities to be more successful. Although not under the direct supervision of the Chief, OIG must keep the board and Congress fully informed of significant OIG activities. Given the complexity of management and policy issues, OIG and agency may sometimes disagree on the extent of the problem and the need for and scope of corrective action. However, such disagreements should not cause a relationship between the OIG and the agency to become unproductive. Annually, the OIG prepares a summary of most significant management challenges facing the Department. The challenges reflect continuing vulnerabilities that OIG identified over the last several years, as well as new and emerging issues the Department will face in the coming year. Some of those areas that GAO considers as high-risk series may include leadership commitment, capacity, action plan, monitoring, demonstrative progress. In 2016, OIG began using the above criteria to measure the Department's progress. Since our last report, the Department has shown solid, steady progress for the majority of its top management and performance challenges. The top management challenges facing the Department are protecting and securing the Capitol complex, strengthening cybersecurity strategies to address increasing threats, strong, integrated internal control systems, managing federal contracting more effectively, and human capital management. Of the 5 challenges of the 2017 list, at least 4 partially met all the criteria for removal from the performance and management challenges. OIG narrowed Challenge 1 from 2017 interagency communication, coordination, and program integration need improvement to protecting and securing the Capitol complex. Because the Department strengthened how intelligence on terrorism, homeland security, and law enforcement information is shared and coordinated with its federal, state, and local partners. Challenge 5, human capital management, is still, however, in need of attention. For 2018, Department challenges remain at 5. Overall, progress has been made possible through the concerted actions of the Chief Administrative Officer, and the leadership and staff within the Department. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'll be very happy to answer any questions the committee may have at this time.
Gentleman yields back. The chair will now recognize Mr. Papathanasiou for 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Chairman Harper, Ranking Member Brady, and members of this committee. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify before you on behalf of the United States Capitol Police Labor Committee, Fraternal Order of Police. I am deeply humbled and honored. Before I begin my opening remarks, I'd like to take a moment to thank Chairman Harper and Ranking Member Brady on their years of service and wish you both luck in retirement. You've been great allies for law enforcement, especially the Capitol Police. Ranking Member Brady, we've personally had many productive meetings throughout the years, and I'm happy to see that you are leaving on top now, that your Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Congratulations. As I enter my 16th year with the Capitol Police, I've been with the union's executive board, serving as the first vice chairman since 2009, and now as chairman since 2016. Joining me today are members of my executive board, first vice chairman, Officer Keith McFadden, second vice chairman, Officer Vincent Summers, and legal counsel for the union, Megan Mechak. Our labor union plays a vital role in the operation and success of the Capitol Police. As outlined in our collective bargaining agreement, also known as the CBA, we contribute to effectively accomplishing the mission of the U.S. Capitol Police by fostering a positive and constructive relationship between management and the sworn employees. However, there's always room for improvement, and there's still work to be done. As the department continues to grow and the mission changes, we must adjust to these changes. I've been fortunate to have a good working relationship with Chief Verderosa and Assistant Chief Sund, but these relationships don't occur overnight. Collectively, we have worked on building a mutual respect for each other, which goes a long way. We meet regularly to resolve issues. Although we don't always agree, we are all committed to the success of the USCP. Some of the issues and concerns we've addressed in our meetings and will continue to pursue together include officer morale, wellness of the officers on the front line, balance of work and family life, pay scale issues and pay cap issues. Unfortunately, we have many areas of disagreement, including ignoring legally binding arbitration rulings, ignoring decisions by the Office of Compliance. CBA negotiations are at a standstill pending negotiability appeals filed before the Office of Compliance and pursued to the Federal Appellate Court. Progressive discipline not being adhered to as outlined in the CBA. As a result of these issues and concerns, the union will continue to pursue and promote the following: fair treatment of all bargaining unit members, good faith negotiations, resist cuts to pensions to the USCP and all of federal law enforcement, enhance law enforcement retirements as we outlined in the 2012 GAO actuary study, pursue the pay scale compression and increase in yearly pay cap, eliminate the biweekly pay cap so that officers don't lose benefits, promote resolving grievances at lower levels, promote the well-being of officers and improve working conditions, especially when officers are working long hours and under the elements of the weather on a daily basis. Eliminate the hiring of retired double dippers who take away positions from the bargaining unit employees. These are just some of the crucial issues we need to work on to make positive changes for both management and employees. These issues ultimately affect us all. At the end of the day, we're all one team, a team dedicated to the department's mission, which is to promote the safety of the congressional community. I am proud of the men and women of the U.S. Capitol Police that wear the badge with honor and dignity. I am proud to be their union leader. As we put our lives on the line on a daily basis, it's time we make positive changes. Thank you for allowing me to address this committee, and I look forward to any questions you may have. Thank you.
I want to thank each of you for your testimony, and it's now time for the members to ask questions, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. And I'll start with you, Mr. Bolton, if I may. And I certainly want to thank you for being here today. And in your testimony, you said that one of the USCP's top management challenges is human capital management. Can you describe this challenge a little more, and do you believe the USCP is doing enough to address that challenge?
Yes, sir. Be glad to. Human capital is not unique in the sense to Capitol Police. It's all throughout federal government, especially in law enforcement, based on my experience. They are managing their human capital, but the issues that they have, like other federal law enforcement agencies, is recruitment, retention, retirement benefits, and you always have that trying to balance between having adequate numbers of individuals, officers on post with your overtime and your restrictions of that, and being able to maintain the security that needs to be maintained. The Capitol Police are doing a good job in managing their human capital. There's always room for improvement. Just recently, just to bring up an issue with the recruit class 191, I believe it is. Yes, they had, 16 individuals ended up being disqualified or dropped from their training regimen. But keeping in mind that training is part of recruitment in a sense to the end. But they have taken other steps to even strengthen their training and recruitment since our report as well, and they had already taken those steps. So they are managing it, but there always needs rooms for improvement.
Okay. Chief Verderosa, first of all, thank you for everything that you do and for what the men and women of the USCP do on a daily basis to protect this pretty massive campus that we have here. In the IG's last report detailing the top management challenges facing you and USCP, the IG's office found that the USCP must revise its performance management system and provide more meaningful goals and objectives to employees that link performance to the department's overall strategic plan and their goals. How do you monitor performance, and how do you ensure that the leadership goals of the department are carried throughout all layers of the department?
That's a great question, sir. I appreciate it. One of our initiatives is to transform our personnel evaluation system into a meaningful document that actually assesses not only the general goals of the strategic plan, but specific benchmarks for what officers do in their particular area of responsibility. So we want the counseling session, when you bring someone in to talk about performance, to actually mean something. We want to tie it to promotional opportunities and also opportunities to transfer to specialty areas, to give incentive for better performance, increased motivation, that kind of thing. I think it's incredibly important, and our human resources are our most important asset, the people. I believe that all supervisors need to be able to communicate effectively with the people who work for them. People deserve to know where they stand. They deserve to know whether they're doing well, whether they need improvement. And that's a two-way street. That's a conversation. And as those conversations occur within the chain of command, we are better able to assess our individual employees and provide them with a meaningful feedback that they deserve.
Great. Thank you. And now I'll recognize the ranking member, Mr. Brady, for 5 minutes for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First for the chief. In your testimony, you discussed the new missions the police have undertaken, garage security, and Neal building, members events, to name a few. I think that Congress has done okay in getting you the bodies and equipment you need for this year and next. But what about the future staffing? And what about the equipment you need for the next 2, 3, and 4 years from now? What can we be doing today to make sure you can plan appropriately?
Thank you, sir. That's a great question. The resources we've requested are within the structural limit of what we can right now train in addition to our attrition. I think there are a number of initiatives that will help us maintain the workforce at sufficient numbers. For instance, over the last 5 years, we've had 27,000 applications. We've hired about 500 employees. Our attrition is low. I think we have a great handle on, and thanks in part to great benefits and a great starting pay and a great payroll system, we want to maintain our employees and we want to give them the best working conditions that we can do. As we finish our Capitol Police Board initiatives for providing mitigation to the vulnerabilities, we will seek to continue to try to draw down the difference between our mission responsibilities and the mission gap in personnel. I know that the Inspector General recently reviewed overtime usage, and they came to the same conclusion that other auditors had found in the past, that we're significantly understaffed. So I think once we work on the new mission sets, we will be able to better hire and retain personnel to sort of bridge that gap between the necessary overtime and the mission responsibility. And that goes a long way to what the chairman of the FOP is talking about, better quality work and off-duty experience.
Thank you, Chief. And for Officer Papa, can you elaborate on the legally binding arbitration issues that you brought up in your testimony, and what exactly does that mean, and how does it impact your membership?
Thank you, sir. Yes, we currently have several pending cases that's going to the actually to the courts, and the department has ignored arbitration rulings and rulings by the Office of Compliance that are legally binding, and the cases just drag on and on, wasting taxpayer money, you know, as far as we're concerned. You know, when an arbitrator and the Office of Compliance has ruled to bring officers back to work and the department just ignores it, I think it's just a cat and mouse game that legal counsel plays throughout the system to drag these cases on and on. So that's my answer to that question.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, on 9/11, when we had that catastrophe, I was in my office, and the police officers came coming in and knocking on all our doors and told us we had to leave. I didn't want to leave because I wanted to watch what was happening. And I said to them, I said, well, why we have to leave, and what are you doing? You're going to leave with me? He said, no, we got to make sure the building's evacuated. We got to run through the whole building. And I still resisted. I said, please, we don't want to use force. Please, will you please leave? I said, fine, you know. And then about 2, 3 days later, we're on the House floor getting a briefing from Homeland Security and the Senate, and it was a mysterious package in between the Senate and the House floor. Again, we had to evacuate, running down the steps, running out of shoes, some people. And again, our Capitol Police were standing there, and they're coming in, and we're rushing out. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, the incident on the baseball field, how they handled that. And some of them have lost their lives protecting us. I mean, when you leave your house, you give your loved ones a kiss goodbye and put on a bulletproof vest. And hopefully, because I know my dad did the same thing, that we may see you again. You may see them again. So my question, I guess, to Gus and the Chief can elaborate, what would you do if you heard a loud noise right now or you saw a mysterious package in the hallway?
You want me to answer the question?
Sure,
Chief?
you can answer it.
All right. We have protocols in place, shelter in place. If obviously, you know, we want to go home to our loved ones, but there's policy and procedures in place for the department and the officers to follow. At the end of the day, like I said, you know, we want to keep the congressional community safe. We first need to know what's going on with the package, or, you know, what the incident is. So, like you said earlier, the officers are running in, they're going to danger, you know, and we want to keep the congressional community safe. And at the end of the day, we want to go home to our family. Like you said, most of all, we want you, the members of Congress, to go home to your loved ones back in your districts or wherever you're from. And we want the staffers and the visitors, you know, to also go home to their loved ones and feel safe when they're here. And I think the Capitol Police has, as they've done in the past, they've done a good job, you know, the officers on this department to run to danger to protect everybody here in this institution, here on this campus, and also away from this campus. It's a lot to do, and I have the utmost confidence in the officers on this department to complete the mission.
Thank you. And Chief, thank you for the job that you do. You want to...
Appreciate it. I'd like to follow up, and I support Gus in his statement in reference to this question. And I'll simplify it a little bit. We work together, whether we're officer, manager, or the chief of police. We're here to protect and serve the members. We often agree on many issues, the union and I, and management officials. I can tell you without hesitation that the officers and employees of the Capitol Police are courageous, they're brave, and they're very dedicated. I think that plays out on a regular basis. I think you see that on a daily basis. We do have some differences. We do have some legal challenges. Respectfully, I see some of the arbitration and litigation cases through a different lens. I see it as exercising management's right to follow the designated appeal process of the Office of Compliance in the Federal Circuit. I think there's a couple of challenges we need to get resolved, and I think once those are resolved, I think all of the other issues will probably fall in place. So I value the professionalism of the union leadership and the union shop stewards. I think they play an integral role in helping me and Gus make positive change for the department. I think we see much more common ground than we see divisiveness. There are certain issues, whether it's a disciplinary matter, which is clearly a matter to be followed via the CBA and through management's right to hold people accountable. It's in the contract. So we see how we interpret the contract a little differently. I think that most of those issues are few and far between because 99.9% of the police department act on a daily basis within the rules and within the guidelines, and I think those are the exception and not the rule. So I hope that helps clarify the answer.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, and thank you, Gus, and thank you, your men and women, and thank your family and my family, and I thank you, and God bless you for the job you do to keep us safe. I yield back, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Chair now recognizes the Vice Chairman of the committee, Mr. Davis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Brady. Thank you, Chief, Inspector General, and Gus. I won't try and pronounce your last name correctly, but I do appreciate what each and every one of you do, and there's a big place in my heart for the Capitol Police officers that work here every single day, and I do my best to try and get to know and joke with each and every one of them, especially Gussie here. Can you tell Potter to get a little faster on the dog going in the Capitol today? I think he was harassing me about the football game. It's a really sore subject. Can you make sure that every football player works overtime somewhere else in 2 years when we play again?
I'm trying, sir.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. It's not trying hard enough, obviously, but it's always great to have good competition, and you guys have a great operation. Chief, I want to start with you. Thanks again for being here today. Yes, I really do appreciate your leadership in making sure that the campus has safety in mind for members, constituents, and visitors, and they get a chance to see democracy in action. Part of your strategic plan is to become a continually learning organization by using lessons learned from successes and shortfalls. I think this is an important goal, especially when used to prevent something like last year's baseball practice. Thank you for what you did that day, too. I appreciated you being there And I think it was a great message to send to those members who don't get to interact with you as much as I do and others. Without going into much detail on sensitive security matters, can you provide some examples of how the Capitol Police has learned from the shooting in Alexandria? And have you put new policies and procedures in place that you can talk to us about?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the question. Obviously, a huge critical incidents cause you to reflect on what you do well and where you need to adjust your measures. You always have to continually adjust what you do. You don't want to create a pattern, and you don't want to get caught behind the curve. You want to always be leaning forward. So as we look at, for instance, member security at external events, obviously we had been in a mode where we provided security for level assignments of protection on a regular basis. We have since widened that net, and we have looked at better ways to be able to coordinate with outside law enforcement in areas where we feel that we can gain some support. For instance, since the shooting up until January, we coordinated over 400 off-campus member liaisons with outside law enforcement coverage for town hall events, for venues where a member is in their district and they are having an event open to the public. We get incredible amount of cooperation from local law enforcement. We also have expanded our ability to protect with our own dignitary protection unit on various venues. And I think from the balance of the year from the shooting, we had 46 deployments of dignitary protection that enhanced coverage that we didn't have prior to that. And along those lines as well, we are looking at coverage more globally. When I say that, we're looking at all the assets that we have that we bring to the table, many of which thank you to the Congress for providing the resources for, such as our SWAT team, such as our hazardous devices unit, patrol officers. They are being transformed into providing coverage at events and venues where we didn't have that before. And also, some of the things that came as a result of the shooting provided us some with tools and technology that help us better assess those events, to have more information so that we can either use that information to our advantage to provide coverage, or we can pass on to our law enforcement partners who may be covering events and for us out in the district and states.
So, and Chief, I appreciate that as somebody I know who's coordinated. You know, as before last year, I wouldn't have thought about security at events, but now it's unfortunate. We get spoiled out here because we see security all around. We take it for granted what your men and women do every day. I can't say thank you enough to David and to Crystal and to all of you as officers. I'm going to ask one last question to Gus, but before that, I want one word answer. Are you sure you guys have got the transponders programmed correctly?
Yes, sir.
For all detailees? Thank you. And it's double checked?
They are checked.
Thank you. Gus, do you find better communication right now between your members, or your members and the chief and administration since the baseball shooting, and getting a lot of your priorities for your members put in place?
Yes, sir. The communication between myself and the chief is night and day from what it was with the prior administration on this department. So things have changed, I think, for the better. But like I said in my testimony, there's still work that needs to be done. And I'd like to work with the chief and the assistant chief and, you know, with my team as well to improve the department and get it headed in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Lofgren, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. You know, as I was listening to the testimony, I was reflecting how transformed the Capitol Police are from when I first worked in the Capitol. Both Mr. Davis and I were staffers before we were elected to Congress, and when I was on the staff here, the Capitol Police were patronage. And I remember, you know, making friends with some of the officers, and they were officers, but they were really just students. And it was a way to have a job, and this has been completely transformed into a professional organization. And it's good to have this testimony today, hearing from everyone. Everyone acknowledges there's more things to do, but I think everyone's also acknowledged the progress that's been made. So that's a little piece of good news. I was reviewing the hearing that we had last year, and one of the questions I had, and it hasn't been answered yet, is obviously we do provide mutual aid to other organizations. I'm not suggesting that that is wrong, but the primary focus is the protection of the U.S. Capitol. And I am assuming that we have written protocols for the provision of mutual aid, and I would like to see them. And it may be that we should do that in a confidential setting. We don't want terrorists to know what the protocols are, but I would like to know what they are and review them. And I'm wondering if we could arrange to do that at some point, Chief.
Certainly. We have memorandums of understanding with some of our partner agencies. We have obviously verbal agreements. In any emergency, we are going to respond as needed, assuming that we have adequate protection here on the Hill.
Right.
We can respond under the law to emergency situations. We have a very good working relationship here in D.C. It's probably just because of the way the jurisdictions are designed here. There's so many different entities that have a part in, you could say, one major event, where the Park Police have the mall, Metropolitan Police have 3rd Street and have some of the avenues,
right.
And then we have Capitol Grounds. We meet regularly. We have a very close personal relationship. We meet with the board, particularly on a quarterly basis. When there's a large event coming, whether it's the State of the Union or inaugural, we actually meet on a monthly basis. We also attend regularly liaison meetings. There's one yesterday at the Metropolitan Police. They have a weekly meeting, and we discuss intel, large-scale events, and all the types of things that are going to occur. The relationship between the agencies has never been better. We have officers who sit on FBI task forces as task force officers. They're embedded within these other agencies, and they become collective in the team that provides us with the ability to, one, particularly, and this is important, when we're investigating threats. We have people who are situated as such on the Violent Crimes Task Force that are able to quickly talk to the resident agent in a particular area, and we get an immediate response.
Well, that is good news. I remember after the 9/11 attacks, one of the questions asked when we had a joint meeting with our Sergeant-at-Arms and the Capitol Police, and one member asked, when did the Secret Service call? And the answer was, well, we're still waiting for the call. And that was, a month later.
Right.
So I think those incidents have caused us to work together, but I'm still concerned about this scenario where you have a terrorist threat and their idea is to create a diversion to actually drain the protectors from their primary mission. And I'm interested what protocols are in place to address that scenario, but we'll do it outside of the public meeting. And I'll just end with this. I think this is probably our last oversight hearing with the chair and ranking member, both of whom are retiring. I thank them both for their hard work and their caring about this department and everything else, and I certainly, I'll be seeing them over and over again, but the interest that they have both shown in the department is really important, and we all recognize that and wish them well in the future. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back, and we appreciate your kind words very much. Chair will now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Walker, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one point I'd like to make as far as regarding Gus. I think no matter what the position, if we had more people like you involved in day-to-day operations throughout the entire government, we'd be a better place. I always love your spirit and your ability to connect and reach out, so keep up the good work. Mr. Bolton, your office identified several management challenges facing the USCP. the word several, is it more than 10, less than 10? A good amount?
Five. Five is.
Five, okay, specifically 5, including the need for strong integrated internal control systems. Can you tell us why these internal controls are so important to the Capitol Police operations, and can you provide some examples of where stronger internal controls are needed?
Internal controls for any agency is extremely important. What your internal control does, one gives you a repeatable business position that whatever your day-to-day activities, whether it's time and attendance, accounting for sick leave, manpower, is a repeatable business despite no matter if someone retires, Richard Braddock decided to retire tomorrow, we can continue on operations and have a continuous product without interruption. Internal controls also prevent, as in the Inspector General world, fraud, waste, and abuse. By having strong internal controls, it eliminates the potential for having fraud or waste, such as, and it's not that it had happened, but even recently when we had a report on compensatory time, where we needed to have a little stronger internal control in deciding when is scheduled overtime or unscheduled.
Okay.
Because comp time with it, and where we had that strong internal, where if it's unscheduled overtime or unscheduled leave, that individual hasn't made the required 40 hours for that week.
Okay.
Now, if it's scheduled, obviously they can, so they can have that overtime. We just wanted to have a stronger internal control to prevent any potential of that problem. So that's why it's very important throughout government to have strong internal control.
Absolutely. And tough question here, but do you feel like that these suggestions, these recommendations, are being taken to the level of trying to implement some of these controls, or are they hearing the suggestions? Can you just briefly touch on that?
Yes, sir. In fact, I would say the Capitol Police is, under the leadership of Matt, has done a very good job in closing our recommendations.
How many have they closed? How many have you recommended, and how many have they closed?
When we first initiated, and we started up in 2006, we have made a total of 403 recommendations to the department. Out of that, 344 have been closed. I just closed 2 additional recommendations this morning based on the response by the department into paperwork, so they were at 61 this morning before I came over here. Now they're down to 59. Now, granted, majority of those recommendations are in the human resources, but that's going to be tied to a lot of the financial statement audits that we have in there. Some are repeat findings. A lot of that is, again, having those internal controls. And
is it safe to say that some may never close because of the way that it's laid out?
Well, I would say eventually it would be closed. Some of the recommendations do involve monetary considerations. Generally, that's what we try to avoid in the inspector, although sometimes you can avoid it, but we try not to place a burden on a department where it's going to be required for them to have an additional budget increase in order to close it. We try to avoid those. Some of them are unavoidable.
Fair. Chief, let me ask you a quick question here, if I could, please. How are the OIG recommendations instituted across the department from a long-term perspective?
Oh, it's critical to our long-term health. You know, I've been working with first GAO and then the Inspector General's office for well over 10 years in looking at these. One of my goals, and obviously we want to improve as an agency. Sure. Always. I actually leverage the audit findings and recommendations. I actually ask for some of the more difficult audits to be conducted because I know that without the recommendations, I may not get a lot of energy and resources. So I actually want the Inspector General to look at these things to help us. For instance, we have a swipe card system where we do time and attendance. Virtually every employee works a different schedule. I have 2,000 employees, and 1,900 of them are law enforcement officers that are working different shifts, different hours. They stay over for different reasons. They may have an arrest. They may have a demonstration. Every one of those personnel has to have their time and attendance certified within a 2-week period. It's very difficult to run around and chase people with a piece of paper. This year we automated a lot of our time and attendance process. So now you can pick up a smartphone at home and dial in via VPN and certify your time in a timely manner. So we went from here on the continuum of internal controls, particularly in time and attendance, because 85% of my budget is payroll.
Sure.
And I have a tremendous responsibility to safeguard the money the government provides to me. I'm a steward of the government's money. We have moved the bar to about here. By the end of this year, through automation, I'm hoping that we'll have the bar here. My top priority for human resources and payroll processing is to remove the material weakness that we get on a financial statement audit on time and attendance processing to at least downgrade it to the next level.
Okay.
So that's a goal. Long term, it's for the health of the agency, and I value Mr. Bolton's input, and I also value the union working with us and trying to find better ways to make that process easier, to certify time and attendance. You know, let's make it easier. If we need to change the rules on swiping in, swiping out, or have drop-down menus for the time and attendance clerks, when the officers come to work, I want them to focus on security, not on their payroll or not on their HR issues. So it's very important that we look at it globally for the long-term health.
Thank you, Chief. My time has expired. Thanks all the panel for being here today. Chairman, yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I want to thank each of you for your time and the information you've given us. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit to the chair additional written questions for the witnesses, which, should we have any, we will forward to you and ask that you respond as promptly as possible so they can be made a part of the record. Without objection, this hearing is adjourned.